Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Meta. This week, we're going to be covering at least my personal favorite, Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask.
Yeah, I'm Jimmy.
And I'm Paul.
And if this is your first time tuning in, we are meta-analysis of everything. Video games and not video games.
Pretty much everything.
Yeah,
that is the definition.
It is everything. It includes everything, and it's 0 and then -1 and +1. And since we're covering video games, spoilers will be told. If you haven't played Majora's Mask, go play it right now. Somehow.
And
Wink.
Then come back and listen
come back and listen to it so that we don't ruin the story for you. But it's fun. It's relatively quick. It's a quick game.
Yeah. It's definitely a huge, time sink. Yeah. Anyways, let's jump right into this. Pretty much, Majora's Mask, I think, is such an interesting part of the Zelda, I guess, timeline. Not the physical, the Hyrule Historia timeline, but more so of just, in the event of how Majora's Mask happened, where it initially came out in 2000, and this is 2 years after the raging success of Ocarina of Time, and it is the first 3D Zelda after to proceed Ocarina of Time, and so the expectations at the time for it were just huge, essentially. And so I think what it had done was just something really different than what people might have been expecting, or the systems it implemented, how the game played out was extremely different from Ocarina of Time. Even though the mechanics were virtually the exact same, even character models assets were verbatim the same in a visual sense.
Yeah, I think it might have been jarring to people to have a game. They're like, this looks exactly like Ocarina of Time, and then for it to be what it is, and that being completely a completely different way of telling a video game story was probably why, I don't know, I think Metascore now, it has a pretty good score, but initially it was probably not the best received.
And I think that's it's this weird aspect of it where there was such this knee-jerk reaction where a lot of people just sort of outright resented it, and then there was a handful of people who really played through all of it and sort of understood what the game was and how it was so fundamentally different from Ocarina of Time, and those individuals always talked it up a ton, and that just happens to be me.
Yeah.
But what was great about it, or interesting, is the fact that later on, years down the road, literally 15 years I think, down the road,
13. Whenever
the remake, the reboot comes out for the 3DS, and I think it gave a lot of people at the time who had played it initially and when it on the N64 to go back and play it and be wow, this game is absolutely mind-blowing, how amazing it is. And I think that makes sense to for a lot of things, because if you I don't know, when I think about myself as a youth playing video games where I can't really fully comprehend the story or fully comprehend everything going on, one of the main mechanics of Majora's Mask was its time-changing mechanic, or just the fact that you're on essentially a clock, and you had to beat whatever events you had sort of set out for you in that timeline, or in that time sequence, or whatever. And if you didn't, you could reverse time by playing Song of Time on the Ocarina, and then it would take you back to day one, and you lose temporary items, if you had rupees on you, you'd lose those, but any permanent items would stay with you. But I think me as a kid would just kind of be oh my god, this is so frustrating, and it's I just didn't have the foresight to plan out what I was gonna do with each segment of time, essentially, to how I would progress the game. And so as a result, it's like so easy like to get sidetracked.
You had to have an agenda. You had to like write like, today, day 1, I will do this. Day 2, I will do this, and day 3, I will do this.
And bombers are all like, "Hey man, do you wanna go get some help this old lady with like her bomb bag issue?" And you're like,
I can't really pencil that in today. I'm
Sorry.
I gotta go look at stars or some shit.
Sorry, man.
No, So I didn't originally play it on the N64. I watched my friend Chris play it. And on the 3DS remake, they have a very inclusive, helpful, it's like a daily agenda, I guess, where it gives you the times things will happen, and then when you complete them, it like X's them out, showing that you've done it. And when I looked back on the N64, that mechanic was still there, but it didn't look like it was as fine-tuned as it was in the 3DS version.
It was at the Bomber's Notebook?
Yeah, the Bomber's Notebook.
So, yeah, because the Bomber's Notebook was supposed to be, like, not as incorporated, I guess, like, as it was in the remake.
Right.
Like, it very much was just sort of related to, like, it was a great, like, way to track things, but it wasn't as, like, prevalent or, like, easily accessible. So, like, a lot of the times you're like, whatever. Bomber's Notebook? Okay.
Well, yeah, because in the remake, the completionist in me, I completed everything, and they even included... It was kind of like the Sheikah Stones. It was like an addition to the Sheikah Stones, because those are also in the remake as well, as they were in the Ocarina of Time remake. But they're even more helpful in the Majora's Mask remake, because they can tell you where all the like extra items and heart pieces are, which then mark it off in your Bomber's Notebook. So it's like the full range of things you can do is available to you. And although I didn't use the Sheikah Stone that much, it was like there was that one part in the Flippy, is it Akanya?
Akana Canyon, yeah.
I was stupid.
Stone
I was
Tower
like
Temple.
I was in my head about it, and I had to leave and go to a Sheikah Stone and be like, oh, it's just a fucking arrow in the fucking first room. And it was just something stupid like that. But it was like the extra stuff that was added in it helped me after not playing it originally on the N64.
Yeah, and I think just as players, what happened, like why it was so well received on the remake was like one, probably like things like the Bomber's Notebook made it more easy for easier for players to look at it and be like, oh, okay, I see, I have to do these things.
It didn't make it too easy though.
Yeah,
you still had to like figure it out. It didn't give you every set of tasks that you could do to get like all the masks in the game. You still had to start them.
Yeah,
so it wasn't like a complete guide to the game.
Yeah, and I think as like an older player too, like having then like sort of developed like, you know, maybe some idea of time management. I'm still working on it. Like you're like, oh, okay, like I know how to like go like through this game, or like how to sort of play it essentially to be able to progress like regularly, and then being able to sort of like explore everything and take that in and being like, wow, this like, now that I'm old enough to comprehend things, like I can understand like how crazy this game is. And I think a lot of it, for me at least, is it's really great at presenting this really dark idea that I think, in my opinion, I think Majora's Mask is the darkest Zelda game in ever.
Currently?
Currently.
Watch Breath of the Wild, just be like,
it's
Link dies.
Super depressing.
Just like straight up.
It's just afterlife. Like everything is just...
That'd be messed up.
Yeah, but it was done so lightheartedly, I think. And part of that is, you know, the visual of it and the music. But I also think...
well, it's all mixed together really well. Because it's like the town theme is still really cute and hoppy. Day 1, day 2. Day 3 comes along.
It's like
suddenly
more
everything's
jarring
super
and stuff.
morbid, and like you can tell everyone's kind of freaked out and sad. And to add to that, it's like the time-changing mechanic, or not just time-changing mechanic, but the fact that there's like the time limit. It's not limiting, even though it is a limit. To me, it feels like you have a lot of time, even though you know that there's a set limit to like each day. To me, it expands the game that much more, because it's like, oh, there's like these 3 days that have different things happening on each of them. So it's like you can do so many things. It just feels like such a great, large, expansive experience.
And what I absolutely love about like the game too is that it kind of gives this like this rare opportunity where like you can go back and redo missed opportunities, and that's because I feel the game does such a great job of making the player think that they're on a time limit. Well, it's like, one, yes, they are, but like
it's a soft time limit.
And yeah, in the sense, it's like you can just reset it and it's no big deal. Like it is truly unlimited in terms of how it is, but like it's really good at convincing players, at least for me, that like I am on this actual time limit, and that like sometimes like I have to make a choice. Like I can't do everything and satisfy everyone when I play the game. And so I have to like make choices to be like, dude, like I have to be here to like prevent aliens from invading, but that means I'm gonna allow an old lady to get robbed like in the middle of the night kind of thing. And it's like, so it's just, it does this great way of being like, you can't save everyone, but like technically you can, but it's not going to be all like really cohesive.
Related, my professor Charlie, he actually thought, because he had never played the original N64, he got the remake, he thought you had to beat each temple in the same day.
What?
So to even progress to like the like whatever, however you go through it, to even progress, he would always beat the like grass area first,
yeah, like Woodfall Temple.
Yeah, like he'd beat Woodfall Temple and then go to the next one. He's like, it's already the end of day 2. I'm so fucked. And I'm like, dude, you don't have to do that. But he like totally was like, I have to purify each area each time. And I was like, that's like hard mode. But like, you can do that. I mean, it's probably impossible to beat like all of the game in like a 3-day cycle.
Yeah,
especially the first.
There were some pretty sweet like speed runs that were done on that too. Like one was like to see like how much you can like how much percent complete you can get in a 3-day cycle in terms of like collecting items and everything. And it's like, so it was crazy because like speedrunners were planning out their thing. It's like I have to have fire arrows before like the end of night 1 because I have to be able to like melt like whatever it is to be able to get to like this part, and like
that's crazy
by the end of like before day 2 kind of. So it was just like really cool. But furthermore, I think just a lot of the like where the darkness of the game comes in is really in the like the little extras that you kind of have to like either think about like more than what the game sort of like lets on, or what it presents right there in the moment. And like thinking that next step forward, being like, wow, like the implications of this is, and I think like a really great example for this is in on like the Romney Ranch or whatever. You know, when you have like day 3 rolls around and the moon's obviously getting closer and closer, and it's like more apparent. They talk about like on the Romney Ranch, there's this rite of age for like when like the kids become of age. Essentially, a rite of passage when kids become of age, that like they drink the Chateau Romney, which is just like an alcoholic drink, essentially. Yeah, alcoholic milk, and like that's
adult chocolate milk.
Yeah, that's the kind of like just the sort of rite of passage for him, right? But then like the older sister or whatever who runs the ranch is like super mellow or whatever, and she's if you talk to like the younger girl, she goes, oh yeah, like, you know, I'm super excited because like, you know, Sis says I can drink like Chateau Romney tonight and everything like that, you know.
Like,
and then
no, that's not, you're not supposed to be happy about that.
Yeah, well, it's like she was like the little girl was all stoked about it, but then the older sister was like, yeah, like, you know, sleeping like also just like sleep with me tonight kind of thing as well, like just in the same bed and everything. But it was like this kind of like really mellow thing where the sister was like, older sister was just pretty much realizing the fact, being like, yeah, like she's going to die, like we're both going to die, but you know, I don't want her to be like scared, like I essentially just want to like just numb her out essentially, and then like, you know, get her super drunk so she dies like without
I don't know if that's implied, but
well, it's kind of this idea that I took having
just when you're describing it, because I kind of forgot that when you're describing it, I think it's like she won't make it to that age to like rite of passage, so instead of waiting in that long, it's just like you're not going to get that far, so you might as well try it before you die. Not to get her drunk.
Well, it's like to like get her like, so she's like, I guess just like dies in her sleep kind of thing, right? Like isn't like
I gotcha.
Scared at like, but it's just like maybe she just like passes out kind of thing.
Could be.
And but it's like that sort of implication, like a lot of that exists in the game where Like, there isn't something directly stated. Like, it's this kind of, like, silent acceptance of, like, yeah, we're going to die.
I think it's a lot. I think it progresses with like the level of the masks, you know, because there's like a lot of early game masks, and then there's like the fucking couples masks and like shit that takes a really like a long time to actually complete. So it's like those masks to me, the masks gives you like a good, because each person, you know, is gonna die or whatever, and so they'll give you their mask, but it's like a good way of gauging the subtleties of it, because what the fuck am I trying to, I don't know. Just
well, it's like, I think there's almost this like kind of symbolism in it too, right? Where it's like in the game, I think it's interesting, like totally different from like a lot of Zelda games, because Link doesn't try to save people.
Right.
Like,
I found my point. It's less subtle in the late game ones, because like the couple's mask is like they get back together and they're like, finally they're like, we're dying tonight, and like they do that. And the earlier ones are like, I'm gonna run away, like the mailman mask or whatever, like stuff like that, where the things that happen to the people who give you the mask don't really seem like the end, like they are accepting of it, but they're not, you know, telling the player that it's this deeper thing.
Yeah. I think the sort of symbolism that exists in it is kind of this idea that like Link isn't necessarily saving people by being like, we're gonna beat this evil, and like, I mean, ultimately that's how the game ends, is like, you know, you destroy like the giant peril that is the moon, and Majora like crashing into
the
Termina.
not subtle
The not so subtle, but like there's more so, it's like for Link to actively progress and become like more equipped by like, you know, getting more masks and everything, and like going through dungeons, is like he has to sort of help people like come to this conclusion that like it's either like okay to die essentially, or like to not hold on to regret. And so he sort of acts as like this weird like angel of death, where he isn't necessarily saving people like you're going to continue on living and like you have a healthy life, but more so being like, you need to really like face like the things you've been running away from, so like when your time comes, you're not like scared, or you don't feel regret. And so it's this like, when you help people reach like their can't think of the word, it's like their clairvoyance essentially,
Sure.
or like their clarity or whatever, you know, they like take off like their mask and give it to you, like they take off like this mask they've been wearing this whole time, like symbolically as well.
Also,
and it's like it's just like their true self that's left then.
Link is the like, you know, voiceless hero, and the what's that? The Christmas Carol, you know, the death visits him, and he doesn't speak. He just like points to shit, and then he finally like gets his epiphany moment, and it's like Link's kind of like that, because he's leading these people to like acceptance, which is kind of funny to bring parallels to the fucking Christmas
But it's also just like, I think it's kind of cool too, because it's also this symbol that like Link is like willing, he's a hero because he's willing to take on like all the burdens of like these people.
It's a good thing he's young.
Yeah, so he's like, you know, he just, he
doesn't really
totally
understand it all.
expectations, like, you're just like, oh yeah, just get used to it at a young age, man.
Jesus.
Like, you're just gonna be disappointed your whole life.
He's like, I've already gone back 80 times.
Like,
You'll never know. I've seen the end. And you're like, oh God, Link, stop.
no, like,
Just go to the milk bar.
Yeah, dude. It's like, dude, this kid really needs like some help.
That's fucked up. Like the implications of Link going back each time, knowing that when he doesn't go back, the world ends. He's just like, yeah, well, if I fail, you all die. So, fuck this.
But there's also just so many like little victories in the game that I think really make it, essentially. Like, I feel like in Ocarina of Time, you know, it's like this one big victory at the end where it's like, I beat Ganondorf and saved Zelda, you know? But like, it's the little, like, every time you're helping someone and like getting a mask, it's like these little victories that help define the game. And like at the end, it's like, it isn't so much like, yes, it is about destroying the moon, but it's like, it doesn't feel as like, if that was just the end goal and there wasn't all the like little tiny bits of like helping all these people and making these little like interactions and differences, like that ending wouldn't feel satisfying, I think.
Well, I think it's also pretty great because the mask collecting system in itself is like an addition to there actually being dungeons. Because it's like in Ocarina of Time, there's dungeons and item collecting, but the item collecting is uniquely tied to dungeons and all that stuff. But it's like the mask system. The only masks that ever are like required for a dungeon are the three, the Deku, Goron, Zora,
yeah.
and it's like those are like the item that you get for that dungeon, whereas you'd get like the bow or whatever. But it's like all the other masks are just like extra stuff because you can beat the game without getting all the masks, and everyone knows that. But why would you want to fight the last boss without the Fierce Deity's mask? But it's like it's completely optional, which is crazy to even think because like that last boss fight is not easy.
No, without like Fierce Deity mask, yeah, that
hard.
shit is hard. I did that when that was the first time I ever played the game. I did it without all the masks, and let me tell you, dude, that shit was
it's frustrating.
It was like a solid half hour I spent on that fight. It was ridiculous. Dude. Holy shit.
He just does a lot of damage.
Yeah, and it's like the second phase too, where he's just running around hella fast, and I'm like, I can't even this is so hard.
I am but a child.
I've burdened all
which
this.
is like a perfect end boss if you were like not readily equipped, because you're not. If you don't have the Fierce Deity's mask, you are not equipped to fight Majora. He is like, I mean, you can still win, but it's like you were not prepared to do this. This was like us against fucking Ganon and
our twin robot.
In fucking Ages and Seasons. Oh man, what a nightmare.
Yeah, but I absolutely love, building off of that, the mask system itself, because like masks were some masks are like that. All the optional ones,
like single use ones.
Yeah, like some of them are single use and they serve just like one small purpose, and then other times like they're wide use, and it's like really interesting because it seems to me like more so the single use ones have more story connected to him, right? Like,
definitely.
The couple's mask you literally just use to get a heart piece, like to dispute something. But the entire process that went into getting the couple's mask, like doing the entire like 3-day like event of like getting Cafe to like finally go to his fiance, even though like he got turned into a child, and like face up to it, and the entire thing in Akana Canyon and whatnot, like all that led up to getting the couple's mask, and then like you just use it to resolve this like one small dispute between like some construction workers and some like soldiers, right? But like you're like, damn, dude, like it felt more important, like even though that was the reward, was like the heart piece, it still felt more rewarding to like have the mask present.
Yeah,
but
because the mask was its reward, and then the heart piece was its like secondary reward. But like getting the mask, the 3-day event is the couple's mask is the most intense thing in that game, like period. Yeah,
because it's like what I love about that too, like getting back to this decision making aspect of the game, is you get to the end and you have two choices, because Cafe's like, look, I only have time to make it back to my fiance kind of thing. He's like, but here's this letter. I want you to give it to my mom to let her know that like I'm alive and okay, and like that like I love her and everything, And so you have like two choices now at this point. You can like give the letter directly to his mom, and then she gives you like I think a fourth bottle, like another bottle that has Chateau Romany in it, but it's like to get the extra
something
bottle.
Like that, yeah.
And then the other one is you can give it to the mailman, and you'll get the mailman's mask out of that. But I still think that's like,
yeah, it's just so many things build off of it. It's so cool because it's obvious the designers put so much like thought and effort into it being like this timed event thing that means so much in the game, but actually doesn't mean that much, because it's like, again, you could go through the game without getting the couple's mask and just hate yourself.
It's just like, God, fucking, plus the mailman is like the best fucking character ever.
So great.
He's just like, fucking, you walk in and he's like freaking out because he's like all this like honor bound stuff, and he's like, I want to flee, but like it, like the schedule says I'm on tomorrow, like, and I can't defy the schedule, and then you give him the priority mail, and he's like, this is priority mail, it must be delivered.
So good.
And he puts on his fucking hat and he fucking goes and delivers it, and then like the mom's just like, why are you here, like fucking flee, like you're fired. And then he's just like, But the fact that he just stayed until like that point, I'm like, dude, this fucking
the fucking like Earth is crumbling, and you can like it's like there's earthquakes, and you can see the moon like 2 feet above the fucking clock tower.
Yeah, and
so
it's
good.
God, there's like so many cool like other little bits and pieces, like especially during like when you hit the final 6 hours of that game, and it's like the countdown is happening. And it's all like the crazy music and stuff. You can go into like the sword master, who like he teaches you like all the techniques, like how to use the sword. Spin attack is charge B. Whoa. Anyways, he puts up this whole thing about how he's gonna like no one should fear about the moon because he's going to cut it into pieces. And then you go into his dojo thing, and it's like he's not there. But then there's like this wooden board that's kind of has like some Japanese characters on it, and you can break it. And he's just like in there like shuddering, like crying to himself, and it's like he doesn't acknowledge you, but it's just like this extra detail that you're just like,
I don't think I ever did that.
damn, dude, like you're like fuck.
That's
like
fucked up.
it's just like all these little tiny details I put in there where it's like people like who like it's like he was extremely defiant and like arrogant or whatever, and he was just like, whatever, I'm not worried about it. But then when it came down to it's just like, you know, he had this like fear that just controlled him till the end kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
You should have gave it off to that little kid to handle it, you know, Link.
Yeah. Too bad. It's gotta be old puss. You really like the moon in Majora's Mask.
Oh God, you like don't even get me started. I think it's just because like you get up there and it's like this weird tranquil setting. You're like, what the fuck?
I know, it's so different. The timer's gone. It's a field. There's a giant tree.
Yeah.
So weird.
But then it's like you go up and there's just a bunch of kids playing. You're like, what the fuck? And then like I kind of liked it because you didn't have to do the extra little mini dungeons with it. Like where you traded off the masks, which inevitably got you the Fierce Deities mask. So it was kind of cool because it was this weird like optional Ganon's castle.
Yeah.
Where it's like if you did it and you had all the masks so that you could get the Fierce Deity mask.
You do the little puzzle room.
Yeah, like, and then you're like, oh cool, I had this like final dungeon essentially before I fought the boss.
Yeah.
You know? And that was like really great. Plus like, I mean, getting more into this like darker theme of it, where it's like you get Fierce Deity's mask as a reward for doing all those dungeons, and like the description of it is like, it's like it contains an evil so powerful, like could it be more like evil than Majora itself?
But it doesn't even tell you. It's like, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it's like this crazy part of it where you're just like, dude, I have to like become evil to destroy, like to beat evil. And it's like, luckily it's just contained in this fucking mask, and Link is like, has burdened enough sorrow to like know how to
he
like
can deal with it.
Yeah, he knows how to handle it kind of thing. Like, it's just kind of, I think, thinking about it now, it's sort of like the cool parallel where it's like, if they're both evil masks, Majora's Mask and Fierce Deity's Mask, where it's like, the difference was like, Link had burdened so much sorrow and like hate and everything.
But he was ultimately like a good.
Yeah, and I think it's like he had
pure.
kind of come to like terms with it, sort of in a way, you know, where it's like because he had burdened it, but he had processed it and like had done so much with it, it's like he could handle that weight. But it's like Skull Kid, on the other hand,
he just got
like,
this power.
Yeah, and like he was super like insecure about things, like he was really selfish and arrogant and like, you know, prideful and all these bits, and as a result, like this evil like consumed him. And
I mean,
like,
and basically just discarded him too.
Yeah,
because he's lifeless during the fight. Because you're like, or what? It sheds him.
Yeah.
For the final form or whatever.
When he goes into when Majora, the mask itself goes to the moon.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he sheds him at the top of the clock tower because the mask's just like, fuck this.
I'm fucking out.
And the what is it? It's like the kid wearing the mask on the moon, who's like not playing.
Yeah,
and
who's like
sitting
he's
by
wearing
himself.
Majora's mask.
Yeah, who I mean you talk to fight the boss.
Mm-hmm.
That's like another weird thing, because like all the other happy goat mask and all the other kids are all like playing and want to play games with you, and then Majora's just like, I'll fucking kill you.
It's also kind of like, it's just so, it's how innocent it is almost jarring in a way, because like as said, like you go through the entire game with these themes of like depression and anger and hate and death and all this, and then like you get to this like moon where it's like extremely tranquil and peaceful, and it's like kids playing, you know, and you're like, this hasn't happened this entire game until now.
Is there
like,
any music on the moon? Or is it just like
no? I think it's just
birds
like
and
like
that's fucking
sound.
That's a genius level. Like, oh,
Yeah.
so many good things in this game.
It's all like, I think honestly, it's like the tiny details that are put into it, and I think as I think about games that really stick out to me, it's like it's not so much the like the story itself is important, but I think how well like creators and like developers and stuff can build the world and like make the world feel really full and vibrant and rich.
Alive.
Is what really defines like amazing games for me. And I think like really Majora's Mask like captured that. Like it felt like you just didn't talk to someone and it was like, oh, here's fucking random villager number 6 who's just gonna say like, geez, it sure is hot today, or like, you know, some like dumb shit line, you know,
blank-faced fucking nobody.
Yeah, but it's
Oblivion character.
It's like this fucking story, or like each person has like this story, and it's like all these events are happening at the same time, and you're like, wow, like this person's life is like crumbling, and this person is like distraught out of their mind, right? But like they don't know that between each other, like, and they try to put on their face being like, oh yeah, everything's fine. Yeah. And you're like, wow, what a...
And it all comes to a head on the third day. And
like, what a fucking parallel to our own lives.
Oh, shit, yeah.
Everyone has their own shit going on, and you're just like, fuck.
People who were writing this game were, like, super depressed. And you're like, oh, wow.
Like, oh,
I mean, you made a really good game, so...
Yeah, like, thanks.
I mean, it's a little dark for a kid's game, but that might have been another thing, because it is kind of dark. The whole, like, anything with the mask in it is kind of creepy by default.
Yeah.
And I think if I had played it when it had come out, I might have been like a little scared of it. I think it would have turned me off from originally like pursuing the 100% completion of that game. So
right.
It's an interesting thing, because if it was initially not the best-selling, you know, Ocarina of Time, blows Ocarina of Time out of the water thing that they were hoping for, even though it is now, it's like, it's just kind of weird to think about.
I think also just like each area you kind of went to, like you kind of took on what that area was. Like you go and they did that whole entire thing where it's like Majora's Mask is like not alliteration, like a
Allegory?
allusion essentially to the like 5 stages of grief,
right.
where it's like, and it goes in order. So it's like you start in Clock Town, where everyone is like in complete denial, right? And then you go from like denial to I think like anger, which is like in Woodfall, like you have like the Dekus are like totally angry with the monkeys and stuff, and like there's like, we're gonna kill this dude, this monkey, or whatever. And then I forget how the order goes. It's like anger, then like bargaining something, and then like acceptance. I can't remember what's after, like, or it's like, I think it's like bargaining, depression
and acceptance, yeah.
Or maybe it's depression, bargaining, acceptance,
something like that.
Like, yeah, I'm getting steps 3 and 4 mixed up. So
Zora's depression, or Ikana Canyon's depression?
I think Zora's were depression.
Okay.
Because Ikana Canyon, which was like interesting, and I think it's like one of the best areas in the entire game, is like it's the acceptance part, but it's funny because like everything there you'd expect to be depressing inside, because it's all this like fallen kingdom of undeath, you know, like. And that trope in games like absolutely gets me every time. Whenever I go to a place and it's like this ancient ruins of a greater civilization that like died in this like, or fell apart in this tragic thing, and I'm just like, dude, but like imagine it in its prime, like it was probably crazy.
Atlantis.
Yeah, like dude, that's I'm the kind of guy who's like, maybe we can still rebuild the Titanic, and it'll
be the best boat. It'll be the best boat ever.
Nothing could sink this boat.
We'll find the gem of the deep.
Yeah, like just like stuff like that kind of like always gets me, man. And like, but going in like into Ikana Canyon, it's great because there's so many also like storylines in there. Like you have like this ancient war that like literally killed this kingdom.
Yeah.
And like, but they're still fighting it, kind of thing. But like the entire theme, every time you sort of like solve like the next issue there, like the whole entire thing is like, yes, like, you know, I've accepted what I am. Like I accepted that I am undead, you know, but it's like, it's just depressing that I have to keep fighting this war. But you know, like I understand how like we got here. Like this is our fault, kind of thing. And it's like,
right.
You know, when you talk to like King Ikana, like he does the same thing where he's like, you know, like this war and like my actions as a ruler have like driven my like civilization to ruins and like to our outcome. He's like, but that is like, I understand that was my fault, kind of thing. Like
right.
I've accepted
he already like knows
the fate,
it, but he's still kind of a dick about it.
Yeah, I know. You're like, but it's like that. I think you have like a similar thing with the music box house there as well too, where it's like the little girl can't like come to accepting like the reality of like her situation, essentially, and she kind of goes through like all those like stages,
right.
like where you show in and she's like, oh, everything's great, and you're like, what's up, where's your dad? And she's like, oh, he's out, and you're like,
grocery shop.
and she has to like go outside, like you have to go inside the house when she's like outside,
right.
and then like go downstairs and then find out the dad's like part mummified, or he's
right.
a Gibdo.
Gibdo. He's gibbed.
Yeah, but I think just like that entire bit too, where you're just like, holy.
Well, yeah,
shit.
it's like she's a little girl in this terrifying like hellscape of fucking bats and skeletons and shit, and of course the music box like prevents them from entering her house, but it's still like she has her dead father in the basement. Normal people would just be like, I'm out, I'm leaving now, and she just stays there because she has the deep, like father-daughter connection, and it like keeps her there, and it's like a lost cause until you show up and reverse the effects. But it's still like, if Link wasn't there, what the hell was gonna happen? She's just gonna starve because no one, like, where was she going? I don't remember when she leaves the house what she does, but she doesn't go far, if I remember.
It's like you have to like do something with the water. Oh yeah, because you remember there's like the water that like spins the wheel for the house or whatever, and then you can go in and there's like the one composer brother there, and you have to like play the Song of Storms that was written by his brother.
Right.
And it like overfloods like the well in there, and it causes the music box to start again. And then she's like, huh? And then she like walks outside after you start up the music box.
Yeah. But she still doesn't like go far. Like, what was her plan? I don't know.
I think it's just it's a little girl, man.
She's not thinking straight, man.
It's just, God, it made me think, too, about, like, how you beat the game, right? And it's like, yay, like, Link saved the day kind of thing. And, like, Moon's destroyed and stuff. But I remember there's this final scene where, like, it's like, because, you're doing all this stuff to get Majora's Mask back for the Happy Mask salesman from Ocarina of Time.
Oh, yeah.
And it's, like, this whole entire thing where it's like, he had the mask originally, and then it got stolen. But then it's, like, at the end, he's holding the mask. And
he's like, finally.
But then he's like, all right, see you guys later. And he like walks away, and you're just like, what's he gonna do with that mask?
He's gonna sell it. He's a mask salesman.
Yeah, but like he understands the power of the mask, right? And it's like, so he's not just gonna sell it to some like careless dude. Like maybe he's in it for like the bigger reward. Like maybe he's gonna sell it to some like head of government or something. Like it's
King,
just this crazy like. Sort of like, oh man, like we won, but like
it's like, did we really?
Yeah, did we really win?
Because
like,
we gave this crazy guy who changes his facial expressions too quickly.
Yeah, and he's always just kind of been like a little like you're like.
Well, he was even weird in Ocarina of Time.
Yeah,
because he's like, buy the mask and get out. And then
get out.
Like, give me the mask back. Yeah. He's just kind of a dick, and he still is, but he's a creepy dick. Oh man! Well, he hangs out in a creepy place in Majora's Mask, man.
He has like an organ handy.
It's creepy. He's a creepy dude.
Yeah, but I think just ultimately, like the game as a whole is something that is definitely aged well in terms of like when it was remade. I think it was able to put in a little bit more extra, like the Bomber's Notebook and everything.
Bomber's Notebook, the updated graphics, tweaked sound bites, stuff like that. It's a whole. I mean, it's the same cohesive experience, but it felt newer, and the controls on the 3DS are so much better than the Nintendo 64 controls.
Players going into it too, probably like they knew what they were going to get themselves into, like essentially the expectation. Because I think when it came out, right after Ocarina of Time, everyone had this expectation for it to be Ocarina of Time 2.0 kind of thing, right? And it wasn't that.
Not at all.
Yeah, and so it's just like it aged well, and then people could go back and like revisit and play it again, And like as you said, the functionality of the 3DS just made it so much more easier to play, like in so many ways that made it more manageable for players.
And it was again, it made it more accessible, not to like gamers, like it wasn't like trying to be like an easy game. It's still a Zelda game. You still have to think and use the sword system and all that good stuff. But it's like they didn't make the game any easier. It's just more accessible. And that's like the perfect way to do a remake is just make it better. Don't take features away, just make it better.
Yeah. But it does the one thing that every Zelda game does, and that's I fucking hate water temples. Like, this game, it was, granted, you did a lot in the water temple, and it was like how you moved around was pretty cool, but I still fucking hated it.
I really hated it. I think I had to do it, or I had to come back to it because of, I don't know, the water level system was just frustrating.
Like Ocarina of Time, any fucking Zelda game that has like, I've yet to play a Zelda game where the water temple was like an enjoyable temple.
Yeah, you can't really say the Link Between Worlds one is a water temple because it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like a true to form water temple.
It's not like, let's change the water level.
But yeah, it's like Ocarina of Time, they didn't learn anything.
Yeah,
for a water temple in between Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time.
It was just it's so fucking frustrating, dude.
Yeah.
I fucking hate water temples.
Yeah. I should make a game called Water Temple, and it's just like frustrating.
The most frustrating game, and then you're like, wait.
You're like, why did I do this?
Fuck.
Yeah. But yeah, I was really happy with the remake because, again, I never played it by myself, so I got to basically experience it anew, complete it 100%, and I felt the 3D in it, again, was really good, and I didn't have the new 3DS, so there's no C-Stick, but it's like, you don't need that functionality because the game just works, and it's a great remake.
Yeah, and I just, like, I absolutely love the, like, I think as a whole, the game was extremely reflective, where, like, if you thought about, like, all the stages the game went through and, like, could process that enough, like, not maybe being like, oh, it's obviously the 5 stages of grief or whatever, right? But you're like, oh, like, people are coming to terms with stuff, and then they seem to be, like, better off, And then it's like, I feel like me growing up playing that game over and over again, like, it kind of just, after a while, it started to, like, sort of sink in, where I was like, the game was no longer like, oh, I'm going to play because it's a Zelda game and I like it. It more became like, damn, like, I have this deep connection with this game, and like, because so much of it like reflects into like how I process or something, like,
yeah, I feel like
it became
of course people are going to interpret the game differently, but that's kind of what's cool is however you choose to interpret it, it will have that impact on you that no other Zelda game that I've played has had, because it's like, it has a deeper meaning to it, obviously, regardless of how you interpret it. It's like, it has a different interpretation.
Yeah.
It's an art form at this point. Majora's Mask is art.
Yeah.
Which is great.
And I think it was like, it literally demonstrated, I think, sort of like the potential and capacity that like Zelda had, essentially, like, and still has, obviously. Like, I think they've elaborated on like different pieces and aspects of it, but it really sort of like took a moment to be like, we can really make something like impactful out of this. Like, we can really make this moving story. And so every time it's like, when you play a Zelda game, it isn't like I don't think every player should be expecting like this sort of cookie cutter adventure that seems like maybe like a trope or like some type of trend, where it's like, oh man, like, what could the story be this time, kind of thing, right? And I think it really kept people on their toes, because I feel like up to that point, like Ocarina of Time, Link's Awakening, A Link Between Link to the Past, Zelda 2, Zelda 1, kind of all had the same adventure.
Right, like, it was like, save the thing,
save Zelda,
princess.
like, yeah, save the princess, defeat the big evil. Whereas this one, it wasn't even save the princess at any point. It was like, save everyone and yourself.
Yeah, it's like save this world.
It's like, help people come to terms with like the fact that death happens. Like, and like, we don't always get to decide when it happens. Like, sometimes it just happens, and we have to be like able to come to terms with our things.
Deep.
Deep, man. Real deep.
All right.
God, I fucking love this game.
It's a great game.
You can't tell because I probably talked for like 90% of this podcast.
I'm totally cool with it. I love it, but obviously not to the point that you love it. Because when the remake came out, I played that nonstop. Because I was just like, I will play this game until I die. And it's so much fun. And it's just a great experience. So if you listen to this podcast without playing it, shame on you. We told you there'd be spoilers.
But yeah, no, obviously, if you enjoyed this podcast, please feel free to listen to our previous things if you haven't yet. This is sort of coming to the conclusion of our Zelda series and our
not this episode.
Not this episode, no, but it's finally coming to a point in the next episode where we're gonna cover the big one,
the big Kahuna,
Legend of Zelda.
Ocarina of Time. Ocarina song. Yeah. It'll play. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. Hit us up on Twitter at MetaPodcast. That's it. Listen to our Well, you are listening to our...
like the Facebook group.
Yeah, we're on Facebook too if you want to check us out there. Thanks for tuning in. You've been meted. Have a good one.
Yeah. See ya.